This is TWiT.
So you, of course, have a panoply of podcasts, independent podcasts, not to be confused with the Panoply Network. You host Cordkillers. That's one of them, a show telling you what to watch and where to watch it. So we brought you on this, our last show of the year, so we could talk about the state of cord cutting this year and what we might see in the future. I have an Apple TV attached to my Android TV.
What?
Am I doing it wrong?
Wait, you have it attached to the Android TV box?
No, I have an Android TV. You know, a TV.
You have a
an Android TV set.
Yeah.
Got it.
But then I have
because there is a box called Android TV also. That's I just tried to clear up the confusion there.
No.
So
I was very
you're
confused.
not. You're doing it. You're doing it fine. You're doing it right. Whatever works for you. The best part about cord cutting, or even just streaming video, even if you haven't cut the cord, is that you have more options than ever. To do it. The boxes are getting better. 4K is de rigueur now on these boxes. Not all of them have 4K. If you don't have a 4K TV, you don't have to spend the extra. But if you do, you've got those options. And there's all kinds of streaming services out there for live television as well as on demand.
When it comes to 4K content on some of these streaming services, I remember back in the day when HD first kind of, burst onto the scene, you had to get very specific as far as the types of content that you would get in that high quality. Of course, we're not there anymore. Everything's in HD. Is 4K beyond that point to where like you could safely say the majority of the stuff that you find on these streaming services, if you have a 4K TV, there's plenty of content to watch on it?
The difference now is with 4K TV, you have to be very specific about what kind of content you want to find.
Right.
It's pretty much exactly in the same place that you were talking about. You've got a decent selection on Netflix, particularly of stuff that they have made, with the weird exception of some of the Marvel stuff. You've got some great stuff on Amazon, again, especially with their originals. And you've got a few other services. YouTube has actually had 4K video the longest of all of them. So that can be, if you just want to put some 4K up to try it out, that can be one of your better streaming services there. But yes, the options are coming more and more stores are supporting selling a 4K version as they work out the deals with the studios on what the prices should be. Apple very famously offered, if studios were going to go on board, and most of them have, they will automatically upgrade your HD copies to 4K if you're watching them on an Apple TV 4K.
So my Android TV, the actual TV, not the box, is a 4K TV, and I have the Apple TV, the new 4K Apple TV. If I want to watch Netflix in 4K, do I then have to pay extra for the 4K streaming Netflix service?
Yeah, now you may already have it. It depends on how many streams you wanted to have simultaneously, because as you pay for higher levels, you not only go from standard def to high def to 4K, you also go to multiple streams. So you might want to check before you go spend the extra money. But yeah, not every package from Netflix streaming comes with the 4K.
So Hulu Live, that came out this year, and YouTube TV also has live TV. Is there any reason to still have cable?
I mean, yes, if you don't have good bandwidth, you might still want to have cable. But if you've got, 25 to 50 megabits per second, which is 30%, 40% of the country, and a lot of people, especially in urban areas, have a good shot at getting something like that, especially if you're in an area with fiber. I would recommend looking at some of these packages. PlayStation Vue is my favorite because of the combination of DVR features and the easier to use guide that they have. Sling TV is still really strong. They've added a DVR feature, and they've got a different selection of channels. So sometimes maybe the channel you want, because it's Viacom, for instance, Viacom pulled their channels from Sony, might be on Sling TV. That might be a better package. Hulu Live is still very much in its infancy. I've seen more problems streaming things on Hulu personally than I've seen on the other services. And YouTube TV is expanding into more and more markets, which was its original limiting factor. Right now, the problem is you have to use your phone to control it. So it's really best for somebody who's a Chromecast user who doesn't mind using their phone as a remote. It's got a great interface on the phone, and it works on iOS as well as Android. They are coming with apps for the various platforms next year, so that will become more of an option as well. But we really are getting to the point where the first consideration will soon be channels. Which one has the channels you want, and then which one has the best price for the channels. The second consideration will then be, do I like the interface? Does it work with the setup that I have? But most of them are starting to work with most of the setups.
Now, you've obviously been tapped into the cord cutting thing for a long time now, Tom. I give you huge props for that because you were doing the cord cutting thing before all the cool kids were. So the rest of the mainstream. Would you say that it's mainstream now? Like, are we at the point to where the line is drawn to where it's easy enough for people to just jump in and get exactly what they're looking for?
I don't think it's quite mainstream yet, just because a lot of people have cable and they're happy with it. And they're like, why would I change? Especially if they're on a discounted package. Where it becomes more mainstream is as soon as that price goes up and you have to call the cable company and get them to bring the price back down. The thing that I would tell people is you have to also consider the flexibility. I not only have multiple providers to choose from, which, for a lot of us, we would only have one cable TV provider to choose from in the past, but you also have the ability to cancel anytime. All of these new online services let you just cancel. You don't have to sign a year contract or anything. That might change in the future, but right now it's really easy. All of them, you can go online and cancel, and that's the end of it. And they'll even give you, nice emails to let you know, okay, this is the day that your service has ended because you canceled. Let us know if you want it back. But you don't get that high pressure, guilt-inducing telephone call experience that you got with cable. That said, I don't think a lot of people have it yet, but it's growing and growing, and it's got to the point where more of these cable companies are starting to come up with their own competitors for it because they see that it's really beginning to eat in to their services. So I'd say maybe by the end of next year, certainly within 2 years, I think it will be mainstream, especially as internet service improves and people get faster bandwidth.
Mm-hmm. So do you just get everything so you can test it and talk about it?
Yeah, I do. It's a business expense. I don't keep it. Right now, I subscribe to PlayStation View and Hulu Live. I cut my YouTube TV because I just wasn't using it, and they haven't added any features. When the apps come back, I'll probably pick that one back up again. I don't have Sling TV at the moment. I just kind of pick it up when they add something new, like when they added the DVR. And I had DirecTV Now, which launched last year, and I did not like it. It was not very good. Apparently it got better, so I tried it again, and I'm like, okay, but it still doesn't have a DVR. So when they get more features back, I might try that out. But yeah, I have to keep jumping in and out of them. With that said, the one that I go to when I'm like, I'm not trying something, I just want to watch something, is PlayStation View.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that one is very badly named because you don't have to have a PlayStation at all to subscribe to it.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I love about the current state of this is that we realized a long time ago, a couple of years ago, that it's a waste of money for us to pay for cable every single month. Now with these services, like you were saying, without guilt, we can just drop in and this is a month where we actually want to watch a couple of football games, or the Olympics, like the Olympics are coming up. We don't pay month to month until something happens where we're like, okay, now is a good time for us to pay the $40, get it for the month. We know we'll watch, and that will justify the cost. One question I have for you is about Kodi, which is a name that we see bubble up in the same conversations around cord cutting, yet it's not always a legitimate approach. I mean, there are legitimate uses. It's kind of like BitTorrent. There's legitimate uses, and then there's a lot of illegitimate uses. What's your take on Kodi, and can you even recommend it?
Brian Brushwood, my co-host on Cordkillers, and I go through how long has it been since we talked about Kodi? Is it time yet? Because we always get this question. We don't want to be answering it every week. Yeah. Because first of all, there's so many streaming boxes out there that claim to get you all of television for free. If you see that, it's probably not true. Yeah. What they're probably doing is selling you a cheap Android box with Kodi installed on it and a bunch of software that may or may not be legal. Don't fall for it. It's not a real service. However, there's nothing wrong with Kodi at all. Kodi is just what used to be called XBMC. It's been modified to be a streaming platform that's open source, has a lot of extensions, and it's a fantastic piece of software. So I think Kodi is great and can be used for a lot of really cool things, especially if you have your own media library. It's not quite as fully featured as Plex, but it's a little more open source. So in that world, Plex and Kodi are kind of your two sides of the street. Do you want the more polished, user-friendly version? You go with Plex. If you want to toy with it and tinker with it more, you go with Kodi. Well, you can toy and tinker with Plex too. Kodi, on the other hand, has a reputation for piracy because there are many people making extensions for Kodi that allow you to get unauthorized copies of things. And that's where it gets the bad name. And it's unfortunate for that because Kodi itself is a great piece of software. Yeah. And like you say, BitTorrent is a good example where BitTorrent, the company, doesn't do any piracy, even was selling videos for a while and had a hard time fighting the idea that BitTorrent was used for piracy because the BitTorrent protocol was.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk about net neutrality in our next interview, but I want to ask, do you think that anything is going to change drastically in the next year because of net neutrality? Anything having to do with cord cutting and the way that you watch TV? What's going to change in the immediate future?
It's going to be an interesting thing to watch, particularly because my guess is, and this is just a guess, we didn't have these open internet rules before 2015. From 2005 to 2015, it was an information service and we were playing under the current setup. They've rolled back a few more protections in this last rule change, but it's generally the same situation. And what we had going on then was ISPs kind of carefully taking a step to see if they could get away with it, and usually not. It was either they were blocking Vonage, for instance, in one case, and they got hammered in court over it. In Comcast's case, they were blocking BitTorrent. They were blocking torrents because they're like, hey, this is illegal. This is anti-piracy. And then the public pressure to say, yeah, but you'd have to do deep packet inspection. That's a violation of net neutrality to do it, made them back off, even though they didn't have to by the rules. My guess is we will probably see one or two efforts to maybe do some zero rating or maybe exempt a service and say, well, we're not violating net neutrality. We're just not counting the bits from our service against your data cap, which is edging on net neutrality. But I don't think we'll see any flagrant violations. I don't think we'll see any actual blocks on things like Netflix or anything like that. The worst thing that I'm expecting is interconnection agreements, because a side effect of the open internet rules was that the FCC said it would respond to complaints about internet connection agreements, which were not covered under the open internet rules. But just the fact that the FCC said they would do it stopped those disputes. And those are the disputes that aren't about net neutrality. They're about Comcast and a transit provider, a company that brings the bits from one ISP to another, that brings the bits from Netflix across the internet to Comcast over the ports. And Comcast trying to throw around their weight and say, well, you have to pay us to reach our customers now, which is sort of unprecedented. That's not the way it's worked. And that caused some problems for Netflix, particularly to get their bits transited. They weren't being blocked. There was a lot of misinterpretation of that. But Comcast was letting the ports fill up and not doing anything about it, and saying Netflix needs to pay us more money if they want us to add more ports. That went away under the open internet guidelines. I would expect to see a couple of those battles come back.
Well, Tom, thank you so much, as always, for joining us. And if you want to support Daily Tech News, and I hear from a lot of you that do love Daily Tech News, support Tom's Patreon at dailytechnewsshow.com. It makes a great last-minute holiday gift. Wouldn't you say, Tom?
For me, it... No, thank you. I'm glad I named the show exactly what it is, so it's very clear.
Thanks so much. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Tom. Happy holidays.
Good talking to you guys. Thanks again.
Good talking to you.